Hello everybody, my name is Vince, and today I'm going to be showing you the process I did for extracting MIDI and putting it into a couple of tunes that you may have seen. I'm going to be showing you the three different methods to make these three separate tunes. All of these are requiring three separate programs as well, but the most common denominator you are going to need is synth font, which you can find in the links below. This program is very important in the process of extracting all the individual files, all the individual tracks, and all that. So be sure to download that, and I will get more into depth into that as we go along. The installation process for SynthFont is pretty straightforward, nothing too big to handle. Just grab the most recent free version, just go install, and then you're good to go. I'll first be showing off the process of extracting DS Midi, since that is the easiest one I found in my experience. An example of me using it is in this video, Hawk's Power, but they remembered the alarm and the boom sound. The program I'm using here is called VGM Trans. This was the only hardship I had with this process. The thing is, the code, or at least the zip file on this link, had a hard time putting out the program and doing what I wanted it to do. So I actually had to look around, and I eventually came across this update to VGM Trans. All you gotta do is scroll down, go to the Assets section, and look for the Windows x64 zip, or whichever one your computer is compatible with, you know, Windows 32, Apple, what have you. And you're just downloading that one. I believe it's preview 1v1. As long as it's that, I think we're on the same page. So you just got to do your extraction process. 7-zip or WinRAR, either is compatible. And the program is usable just right off the bat. And from here, the process is pretty basic. Just find your DS game, which you can see right here. You can just drag and drop it, in fact. And we're looking for Hawk, and I believe this is the one right here. Seems to be sounding right. All right, so all you got to do is right-click and then export as MIDI, and you're gonna need the SF2 file as well, but I do believe the DLS works as well. You can do both. You can do all three, in fact. Click one of those and then just instantly save. And then it should just be found in the folder you put it in. Now, for the sake of argument, I'm going to show what your MIDI would sound like by the computer defaults. Not exactly how we want it, right? This is where we hop into SynthFont. So let's boot it up and let's get going. The nice thing about SynthFont is that you can put in some custom sound fonts that you can acquire, like for instance the DS or the Game Boy Advance, or really whatever you can find. For the example right now, I'm going to be using Advance Wars 2 just as a little example, but to actually change the sound font, here's what you gotta do. You just gotta click all of them, or the specific one you want, right click, and then assign sound font file, or F3. Should be located in the folder we just exported it to through VGM Trans. And then right here you're going to get a couple of prompts. This prompt right here is going to ask if you want to assign a file to the whole track or just specific parts of it. And I usually just put in the whole track, just for the sake of ease. And then I believe for the rest of these prompts you can just press enter or escape. I don't think it matters too much, but you may have some problems getting the wrong specific MIDI file to call. You can usually just do a couple of soft resets on the program, or just switch the sound font file over and back. But with all that troubleshooting out of the way, let's hear how it sounds. Looks like everything checked out. Well, save for the alarm sound. It's actually a pretty easy sound to find isolated while playing the game. Just like right here. And so now let's export all these tracks right here. We're going to have to do them all individually as far as I know. All you gotta do is just uncheck them on the left over there, and then just press play to file to each and every one. Yeah, it's a little bit of a tedious process, but hey, whatever works, works. I'll just skip ahead to all the tracks being exported. And there you go, you extracted a MIDI track from a song. And now we get to the fun part, where we put all the tracks all together, and we just remash a Hawks theme with the alarm sound and the boom sound effect. Nothing really to it to hear. I'm just going to show you how I started off. And how it looks finished. Thankfully, the beats per minute were all the same, so thankfully I didn't really have to mess around with the tempo changes. Hawks theme was actually quite faithful, tempo-wise. I can't really say much else here. It was just a lot of playing around, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't. A lot of the sound effects did not make it in the final cut, as you can no doubt see. Really, this part just comes down to playing it by ear, so I can't really give you that kind of advice. And with that said, I think that covers the DS side of things. Let's move on to the Game Boy Advance side. Alright, now onto the video, Hawks theme, but I added the alarm sound and the boom sound effect. Very similar to the last time, we're just going to be using a different program. It's called GBA Muse Ripper. Now, unfortunately, I could not get VGM Trans to work for GBA titles, so this is the program we're going to be using. It's a bit of a complicated procedure, but I'll try to make it as understandable as possible. So, we just sort of get ourselves verified. As a human. We just download it. And then, you just do your typical extraction process. And let's make sure we have it where we want it. Keep it all in a nice folder. Let's go to gba.museripper. And what we got to do now is grab a copy of cmd.exe. And that can easily be found in your programs file. All you have to do is just make a copy. And then we just paste it on this folder right here. And what we got to do is type in GBA underscore MUS for Muse underscore and Ripper spelled Riper R-I-P-E-R. Press the spacebar one time and then grab your emulator ROM and make sure the name is exactly right and be sure to put in a space after GBA underscore Muse underscore Riper. Otherwise you'll get an error like this. So let's try to do it right this time. And then you can just copy the whole thing and then paste. And voila, look at that. The extraction process has begun. It'll take a little bit of time, probably about 15-20 seconds. And there we go. We have the entire sound font and all the individual MIDIs of Advance Wars 2. So I believe Hawk's theme is... if you sort by size, you can easily find the actual songs compared to the MIDI samples. And we're looking for, I believe it's song 402 for Hawk. There we are. So what's going on here is that we haven't changed the sound font to the Game Boy Advance version of Advance Wars. We're still on the DS version. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to do what we did in the DS version. You can just look back there. And it should work pretty much fine. Just be sure to grab the SF2 file of Advance Wars 2 instead of Dual Strike. Just remember where you put it, and we should be good. Alright, so second verse, same as the first. We just played a file to all these tracks individually. Got to go through that tedious process again. And I'll meet you back on Audacity. So, once again, we're back on Audacity. and we just put all the files in. The only thing we really got to do is just sync everything up, and I'll show you how it looks at the start. And here it is at the end with a little bit of creative tinkering. Now, friendly reminder, I have not made any of these songs. This all comes from Nintendo and WayForward and everybody who makes that. Be sure to credit them. And likewise, I have not made these programs. I have just merely found them. So I will try to do my best to credit everybody involved that I can. But with that said, I believe that covers the DS and the Game Boy Advance. So now we're going to move on to something a lot more tricky. We're going to go into the Game Boy / the Game Boy Color. Alright, so now we are going to get the MIDI files from Game Boy Color games. This can get a little bit hard to understand, so what I'm going to do is just follow that first link. And what we got to do here is we got to grab a special variant of the VBA emulator called VBA-recording. The download section can be found on the left, right under wikis, and I recommend just downloading the most recent version. Alright, and you just do your typical extraction process. Try to keep it organized as usual, and it should show up in this folder, VBA-recording. And this is how your folder should start out looking like. Nothing much in there right now. We're going to add a few things. So next on the list, we got to get to the emulator to MIDI. It is another GitHub download. Just download the zip when you click on the code. And the next step is to verify that the Lua script is included in the emulator. I don't believe it was included in this one. So we're going to install Lua for Windows, and we're going to put these files into the emulator's directory. Another GitHub download, and we know how to do that. Just go to code, download zip, and let's get that extraction process taken care of. One specific issue that confounded me for the longest time is that there was actually another missing file within this package, and thankfully this guy right here just managed to find that file and put in a nice little download right here. It is the midi.lua file, and it is very important in the recording process. Now this one you are going to need 7-zip to actually extract, and other than that you just have to extract it via 7-zip, extract it a second time, and then you should have the file. On the right-hand Explorer window, this is what your set of files should eventually look like. Now, some of these folders you will have to drag and drop, and others will be automatically created. So let's start with the drag and drop. Alright, so first off, from our emu to MIDI Lua master, we are going to grab the files emu to MIDI.lua and GB to MIDI.lua. And we are going to put those directly into the folder of your emulator. Now we go to that folder with the midi.lua. Let's grab that, Control X, and let's just paste it back onto the emulator folder. That should be all the drag and drop files we have, so let's boot up our emulator. Now the nice thing about this emulator is that it'll automatically create saves and battery and other important folders that will help you with emulation. From what I remember, the original VBA emulator does not do that. So at this point, you can go ahead, throw in your ROM file, and what I also did is had a save state that thankfully translated properly when moving it to the save state folder. Alright, so let's boot up our ROM, and what I'm going to do is boot up that save state in that ROM. So this takes us to the ending theme of Pokemon TCG 2. And what you gotta do is drag and drop gb2midi.lua onto your emulator window. Make sure you absolutely have MIDI to Lua, otherwise you'll get an error message and it'll just kind of crash. Make sure that you are on the screen and it's playing as it automatically starts recording. Press the stop button when you're done recording. And voila, it will just actually create a MIDI file out of all that. Now, sadly, if you actually want to listen to the whole thing, you're just going to have to wait the allotted amount of time for the MIDI to play. So this is actually like a 3+ minute song. So, or I'd have to wait about 3 minutes to actually get the file. But with that said, we have our MIDI file. Now we can experiment. For this example, I am ripping the Golden Sun sound font to show you the process I did. Let's throw our MIDI in and our sound font files like we did in the first tutorial. And then we'll just start the extraction process. Now, before we go on to the next part, I'm going to show you one little detail about synth font that will be pretty important, pretty useful when switching around MIDI instruments. Now, your MIDI program typically will switch around instruments depending on the track and the details on the track. What I like to do is just try to keep it the same track, and to do that, to keep it from changing, you just go into MIDI events, and on the show these events, go to program, and it'll show you all the times it'll change to a different instrument. So if you just delete this, it'll keep it to the same instrument. It makes it easier when you're just exporting everything just the same instrument. So that's just a little detail that might prove useful. One thing I did specifically for this tune is that I exported several different instrument variations of these tracks. So you'll hear a lot of instruments playing the same thing. So let's give it a listen. Another thing I did is that I just straight up stereo mix recorded the percussion segment, because Pokemon trading card games percussion is very, very hard to place into a MIDI. It has incredibly short notes to it. Very complicated. And so a lot of MIDI samples just won't be able to translate correctly. Anyway, I believe that's everything I need to explain. If you have any other questions, you can just leave them in the comments, and I should be able to answer them as best as I can. I'm also going to leave a few videos for what I use to research. The third tutorial is kind of undocumented in video, so sadly I cannot give any reference to that. It was a lot of trial and error, unfortunately. With that said, I hope you guys found this informative. If you guys are interested in making your own MIDI remixes or remasters or mashups, I hope this is a very useful video. For a few last words, I'm personally not too interested in continuing making MIDI mashups or remasters or remakes or of certain tunes from video games. This is definitely just more of a passing interest that I just recently had. So if you guys have requests, I'm probably going to refer you to this video. More power to the people if they have the knowledge and the tools to do it themselves. I'm sure the Advance Wars fan base will find some very good use out of this tutorial. I honestly just don't really have the personal invested interest to do it myself. So that's sort of why I made this video, just to help other people out. If you really want to do what you request me to do, honestly, it's just better to do it yourself. I'm just a massive Hawk fanboy, and I just really wanted to do his theme justice. And with that said, my name is Vincent. My name is Vincent Rongone. And yeah, have yourselves a very nice day.